Hi, Gina. Challenges that you have, the advertising for salespeople needs to be different. Um, you got to collect resumes, of course. The interviews should be different. We should never have to hope and pray that a salesperson is going to work out. But let's say we did that process on an office manager. We bring them in, we make them the offer they accept, we teach them the processes, we teach them the tools they need, we introduce them to their coworkers, we give them some on the job training, and pretty much within a couple of weeks, they're going to meld into the office. They're going to, really work out and kind of become part of the team. And we don't have to worry about those people a lot. But look at salespeople. Salespeople are competing in the marketplace against your prospect's time. They're competing in the marketplace against your competition. They're competing internally for your resources and the sales manager's time. They're competing for everything, and that's a very different world. They get a lot of objections. Imagine having your payroll department come to you and say, well, we're about 70% right on payroll this week. We're going to go ahead and send it out and see what happens. Well, that just wouldn't work. So what we need to think about doing is how do we apply the same types of stringent requirements and accountability to salespeople that we do everywhere else in our business. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things, but let's just kind of break this down a little bit when we think about the hiring results in sales and why they're typically pretty poor. It just doesn't work that way. So when you advertise it, most ads are the wrong types of ads for salespeople. Here's an example of one. I'll give you a chance to read it, but basically just trust me. This is not an ad that is going to attract that high performer. Yes, it has $100,000 a year. Yes, it's weekly training and base pay and all the things that we want salespeople to be attracted to. But here's the problem. If you run a traditional ad to attract salespeople, you're going to attract traditional salespeople. And those traditional salespeople are those weaker bunch that look like can sell but won't sell. And so we have a database of our sales assessments that's about 2 million salespeople strong. And we know that only 7% of the salespeople out there today are in the elite group. 20% are in the pretty good group. And the other 70%, 70 plus, of those salespeople that are in the market today should not be in sales. Those are the ones that are giving sales profession a bad name. So we need to write the ad differently. Most companies want to talk about the offer. Most companies want to talk about the great opportunity they have, how long they've been in business. Look at the first sentence, nationally recognized leader. That's not going to do it. Other companies, they'll take and they'll talk about, what we can offer in the marketplace, where we fit. But here's what we want to do. Best tip I can give you about writing ads. Write the ad to describe the candidate. Who is the exact right candidate for you? What do they do? What kind of experience do they have? Not necessarily in your business or your industry. Another question we get a lot is, should I get people from my industry or should I get brand new people and teach them my industry? Well, here's the rub. Certainly there are some industries that require a ton of technical knowledge. And that takes a long time to teach people. But I would guarantee you that based on our experience, it's much easier to find someone who can and will sell and teach them your business than it is to take someone who knows your business and your industry and teach them how to sell. So technical information can be learned pretty quick with applied effort. Sales can't be taught with just applied effort. Sales is a long-term, ongoing, growing career, typically taught by failure. And so it's a challenge to coach people if they're not out there in sales, if they're not having conversations, if they're not going to meetings, if they're not getting the objections, if they're not getting hung up on, if they're not facing that rejection. And so when we write ads, our proprietary way to write the ad is to describe that individual. And from that, we will get maybe a fewer set of resumes. However, those people are certainly going to be more appropriate and better fits for our particular position. So in the future, write your ads. You know what? I would tell you guys this too. Just for attending the webinar today, send me a copy of your ad. We will review your ad for you and we'll make suggestions and rewrite the ad for you as a free service. Normally, we would charge a client for that, but because you guys showed up today, be happy to do that. Send us your ad, we'll review it, we'll adjust it, we'll send you the corrections we would suggest, and we'll tell you where to place it. Which is kind of the next thing if we think about, placing those ads. So here's a scenario I love to share. I don't know how many of you like to fish. I'm a fishaholic, so I'm going to use a fishing example. I hope that's okay. But the difference between a professional fisherman and an amateur fisherman is about $200,000 a year. Why is that? Well, because they're on tour, they're making money. The real difference is the amateur fisherman goes out, they throw their line in the water, they've got some bait on there, they don't know if it'll work or not, and they hope that something bites it, and they get lucky every now and then, and that reinforces that they think they know what they're doing because they got lucky. Well, the difference is a professional fisherman knows there are 7 factors that impact what to throw and how fast to throw it and what color to throw. And that is barometric pressure, cloud cover, water temperature, air temperature, natural bait, bottom structure, water clarity. So those are the things that are going to affect what a professional fisherman uses. So in our world, we certainly would consider ourselves professionals in helping clients hire stronger salespeople and everything from cradle to grave through that process. So if we look at the individual and identify what does that perfect salesperson do? Who do they call on? What's the sales cycle? What price have they been used to selling? What kind of environment do you provide for them in your company? Are you providing leads? Must they hunt? What kind of resistance do they face in the marketplace? What's the competition like? So there's a whole lot more to the story, but we take that information and we basically write the ad to identify your ideal salesperson. And then where you place that ad is kind of like throwing the line out in the water. Where do we throw it? Well, we got to throw it where they're at. We got to get the ad in front of those people. So a couple of non-traditional success stories for you. We worked with a mortgage company years ago. This was probably 4 years ago. The market was starting to change. He was using the typical job boards. He was writing the typical ads, and he was not getting the response. So we did a little study when we got started. We found that he had 3 call centers that were employing about 10,000 people, all within 10 miles of his office. Now think about a mortgage company. He was selling VA loans and second mortgages. And so he had all these leads coming in, and the job was very similar to what these telemarketers were doing inside their companies. They were taking calls and making outbound calls. And that's very similar to what he had them do. So instead of using the traditional approach, we went to the diners that were around those call centers, and we put the ad on the placemats where those people ate. They would have breakfast there, they'd have lunch there, and they'd stop there on the way home. We also took the ad and we put it in the bathroom bars in those bars that were around those companies. So when people left work, went to happy hour, go to the bathroom, they see the ad. And then additionally, we put the ad in the laundromats that were nearby there. So within 90 days, he had 6 great people and a brand new sales manager because we went non-traditional, because once we identify the individual, we can know where they live, we know where they work, we know what they do, we know how they do it, and we go get in front of them. And so that's another important factor about not only just writing the ad, but where do you place the ad? We had another gentleman in the Midwest that was selling the coffee, what do you call those? The barista coffee makers that have, all those different types of levers on them, and they can make kind of like going to Starbucks. He would sell the machines that go in Starbucks. And he couldn't find anybody. So instead of going their traditional route again, we went to the coffee shops. I mean, where do salespeople go for meetings? Where do they go meet their friends? They go to the coffee shop. So we put the ads on the bulletin board and in the bathrooms of the local coffee shops. And it was in no time at all. He had a great pool of candidates, and we helped him hire 2 people within 60 days. So really important to think about what is that perfect makeup of your ideal salesperson, and then write the ad that way. Resumes, are they truthful? Well, I think we started by saying, a lot of people in the millions have lied on their resume and gotten jobs, and it happens all the time. So what's important about a resume? Well, to me, what's important about a resume is more of what's not there as opposed to what is there. When you look at a resume, they're going to tell you everything great about the individual, right? I was in President's Club. I made the top 5. I got the trip to Hawaii. I won this. I was the best. I was the best. They're all the best, right? It's like watching Monday Night Football. Every player they talk about is the best in the league. It's just crazy. So what I want to know is, how did they make President's Club? What was the difference between what they did and what their peers did? Was that a lead that came to them, or did they go out and find that opportunity? Could it have been anybody in that chair that got that call or that got that business? Or was it something they did specifically? So I want to look at the resume and really identify not just where the gaps are in employment, but what are the reasons why they got those awards? What are the things that they did personally to make the difference? How much did they face from an adversarial standpoint? What kind of competition did they have? So I want to know a lot of those things about the resume. It's good information to look at. Some of the bad information on a resume that people put too much really effort into reviewing is the dates. Salespeople today are spending 18 months or less on average at a particular job. So while today there's not a lot of salespeople, guess what? There are a lot of salespeople if you know how to attract them and you know where to attract them. Because every 18 months, there's 18 million people in this country that are changing jobs. So there's a lot of opportunity to find a lot of great people. So when I look at the dates, I'm not so concerned about when they left or how long they stayed, as long as I can recognize that they left and went to a better opportunity. And if they're continuing to improve, then that's a great thing. If they're going from sales management back to sales, I got to dig into that and figure that out a lot. What's really happening that's causing them to do that? Were they a really horrible sales manager? Did they just not do well in sales management? Were they fired for some reason? I've never ever heard of a company firing their best salespeople. So there's got to be a reason why they left, and I want to ask for that. But when I do that, I'm listening for excuses. Are the reasons that they left excuses where they're blaming the company, blaming the competition, blaming the industry, or are they saying, I did it personally because I wanted to improve? And I know that's kind of a condensed version of it, but use the resume to ask questions about what is not there, and you'll have a better interview. So when we think about the traditional approach, step 3, salespeople are typically better at interviewing than you are. We kind of covered that in the early stages of the workshop. But just think about this for a second. When salespeople are looking for a job, if they are out there day to day and they're working with prospects and clients, they're used to new introductions. They're used to meeting new people. They're used to having good impressions. So I want to take that in consideration. And when we get to the first interview, I'll show you how to turn this into an audition and force them to be the salesperson that they are instead of the salesperson they want you to think they are. And then, of course, hope and pray is really not a very good strategy. So we can't apply the traditional approach to sales hiring. So the answer is, obviously, we've got to change the way we identify, we attract, interview, hire, and keep stronger salespeople. So what do? Well, first, we need to kind of look at what happened in the past with you and your company. I talked with a salesperson just the other day, and they said, yeah, I left this organization, and then since I've left in the last 6 months, 4 other people have left. And I'm like, well, why do you think that is? They said, well, it's horrible management. They don't support you. They don't give you the tools you need. They're asking you to go out and do things that are unrealistic. And so a lot of times we have to look at the company. And, I just want to make a point here. I don't know how many sales managers might be on the call today. And this is certainly not a slam against sales management, because I love sales managers. They do the best they can, but they're really caught between a rock and a hard place. They got to give everything that management tells them to give to the salespeople, and they got to hold them accountable, and they got to deal with all the pushback from the salespeople, and then they got to deal with it when the numbers aren't there. And so it's a challenging position. But sales managers just typically don't have the skills to really manage stronger salespeople. So if you think about it, A players won't work for B managers. And so part of the challenge in identifying those flaws is really taking a look at sales management. What are the current systems and processes that you have in place? How do you hold people accountable? What do you hold them accountable to? What kind of support do you provide them? What kind of coaching do you provide them? I talked with my sister yesterday in Dallas. She just got a brand new job and she's been there a week. And she said, I almost quit today. I said, why is that? She said, the owner came in and threw a hissy fit about all the things that weren't done. And I looked at him and I said, I didn't know you wanted me to do those things. You've never told me any of that stuff. And he said, well, why don't we sit down and let me help you understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And so her first week, he didn't give her any training. He didn't give her any access to resources. He just said, here, go do your job. And we find that too many companies look at salespeople like that and go, oh, here you go. Go do your best. Here's your phone. Here's your computer. Here's your list. So we've got to take a closer look at what happened in the past. And let's see if we can correct some of those things for the environment that the salesperson is going to come in. And then as we look at that, we're looking at your sales DNA. What makes it work in your organization? And so there's a lot of factors there that we want to identify and use that to attract the right people. And then once we have those people, onboard them correctly and give them the tools and resources that they need. We talked about writing the ads. Here's another horrible ad I found. Excuse me. So again, just attract the right talent. You know, one of the things that we do with a lot of organizations is we'll do what we call a tailored fit. In other words, we'll take their top 3 salespeople, we'll take their bottom 3 salespeople. We'll complete the client profile, we'll have the salespeople complete some surveys online. We'll look at 280 different findings for each individual, and we're able to identify what are the top 3 salespeople doing that the bottom 3 people aren't doing. And we're able to capture that information and then apply that towards new candidates and measure them against that particular, I wouldn't call it a benchmark because benchmarks only look at top performance. We look at top and bottom to get the total picture. So we're able to measure candidates against those particular factors. Now, one of the things that we find on a fairly regular occasion is that the salespeople that are not performing are really stronger than the people that are performing. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that they're not attracting the right talent. They're attracting people that are much stronger than the position requires. And so they're probably paying more than the position requires, and their expectations really for those salespeople are lower. And so that's sometimes what creates some turnover is that reverse effect of not necessarily having the stronger salesperson, but having the right salesperson. You know, you can't take someone out of a position where they're used to making decisions and they're used to making the deal and they're selling for large amounts and put them in a position where they don't have the authority to make the deal. They don't have the price points that they're used to selling. They're stronger salespeople, so they're running off the prospects by their strengths instead of allowing the prospect to take their time through the buy cycle and help facilitate that buy cycle. So when we look at the right talent, we need to really identify what is that right talent for you in your position, the way you manage and the way you deal with things. We talked about posting and non-traditional sources. That's really important. Not all job boards are equal. Not all job boards are productive. Some job boards are specific to different industries, and job boards have their place. I'm not saying anything against job boards because we use them all the time and we recommend that our clients use them. And there's certain ones that are better for certain positions in certain industries. But there's also, you know, the non-traditional way. And that way typically will bring in more of the right people. If we can do that psycho-demographic and look at your ideal thing, what does your ideal salesperson do? What does that tell us about that individual? And let's go get in front of that individual. I opened the Valpak. I don't know if you know what Valpak is. It's that little mailer that comes in the blue envelope. Went through that the other day, and there were several ads in there for hiring. We've seen radio be a great resource. We've seen billboards be a great resource. One of the resources that a lot of people overlook is their current client base. I mean, some clients say, well, I don't want everybody to know I'm hiring. And that's the wrong answer. We want everybody to know we're hiring, and we want everybody to be looking for us and helping us. We definitely want to let our clients know. We want to let our vendors know. We want to let our bankers know. We want to let our accountants know. We need to let everybody know that we're growing. We're growing and we need some help. We got a great place. We got a great opportunity, but we're looking for a very special person. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the things that a lot of companies waste time on is automation. Now, if you're a large company, you probably have an applicant tracking system. You probably have all kinds of internal ways to manage those candidates. And certainly we've got tools that we can help you with from that standpoint too. But using automation is really simple on the sales hiring side. Of course, we want to automate several steps of the process. And the next step of that process is really using candidate assessments. So I don't want this to sound like a commercial, but it's probably going to. So I apologize up front. But I want to help you recognize that there's a lot of different assessments in the marketplace. And I think that was one of the questions that came up earlier. So I want to spend a little extra time here. There's behavioral assessments. We talked briefly about that, but behavioral assessments typically go out into the marketplace. They look at a select group of people. Maybe it's 600 people in a particular position. In a large company, they'll look at the top performers just in that large company. Across the board, they'll look at 5,000 people in a group in an industry. And they identify what are the behaviors that those people have. And they make the mistake of saying, well, anybody that has these behaviors will be successful in this position. And that's just not true. Because when we look at the bottom percent of salespeople out there, we recognize that they have many, many, many common behaviors as the top producers. But those aren't the behaviors that are making those people successful, and they're not the ones that are making the bottom performers unsuccessful. And so behavioral assessments, they give you good information, no doubt about it, but when applied in sales, they're very poor at predicting sales execution and sales productivity. Another type of assessment in the market that you might be familiar with would be a personality or a psychological profile. And typically these are going to fall into the personality styles. You might have heard of DISC, Myers-Briggs, Wonderlic. There's all kinds of tools out there that, will tell you what style the individual has, what's their communication skills, what is their ability to, build relationships, or would they rather be stuck in a corner by themselves, working with numbers and graphs and charts and be very detail oriented? Are they more hard charging A-type players, or even some AAA players out there I'm sure we've run across? But those are good things to know about an individual so we can adapt our leadership to their style. But I don't see how knowing what someone's communication style is and what their personality style is, how that predicts sales success, because we're only identifying about 3 or 4 personality styles and traits. And we're assuming that because someone has the ability to go build relationships, or because someone has the ability to challenge a prospect at a particular time in the sales process, that they're going to be effective at generating business. And that's just not true. That's a fallacy. And it's, again, a poor predictor of sales success. So the other third type that all of the assessments might fall into would be aptitude. And in aptitude assessments, we're measuring cognitive reasoning. We're measuring their decision making. We're measuring their ability to, understand information and what they know. And here's the problem. Just because you know something doesn't mean you're going to execute it. It certainly doesn't mean you're going to execute it when you get emotionally involved, when that prospect winds up and throws you a big curveball, or when the prospect plays the competition against you, or tells you you're too much money, or you've got to fight for the business to tooth and nail to generate it over a couple of pennies. So when you think about those types of assessments on the marketplace, they just don't work. They're poor at predicting sales success. So again, I don't mean to be a commercial, but I've been using these tools, all three of those, plus this one I'm going to introduce, for the last 30 years. And I can tell you by far, the Objective Management Group set of sales candidate assessments, we measured 21 core competencies. We measure that against your particular DNA, your particular client profile, and that position. We've got 280 different findings out of those core competencies. We're measuring what we would call will to sell, which is kind of grit. What's their commitment level? What's their desire level? Do they have enough desire and commitment to get through the learning curve that it's going to take to learn your business, your products, your internal systems, your market, your customers, your differentiation in the marketplace? And so we need to know that up front before we even make anybody an offer. Actually, we would like to know that before we even do any assessments from the resumes. So when we go back a step to automation, we help you automate the process to get salespeople tested long before you even interview them, before you even do a phone screen. And that test tells you, are they people that would be recommended for your position or not recommended for your position? You may have 2 or 3 positions that are open, and they're different positions, inside sales, outside sales, key accounts, and someone could fit really well in outside sales, but not really fit in inside sales. So it's not anything against the individual. It's just they don't have what it takes to be successful in that role in the time frame that you have for them to be successful. And when we define that time frame, we want to say, what is their 5 times return on investment for you? How long is it going to take you to get at least 5 times return on what you're paying that individual? If you can't do that with salespeople, you need to keep looking for stronger salespeople or better salespeople or the right salespeople, if you will. So when we look at those grit factors, responsibility is one that shows up. Salespeople don't realize they're making excuses. Most of them blame the competition or blame your company or blame something else. And we need to know that up front. Now, it's an easy one to fix, but that's certainly one of the things we want to know up front. Of course, all of the special skills that you might be recognized and interested in knowing, hunting skills, can they generate new business? Will they prospect? Not can they, but will they prospect? When you look at account management versus hunting, what's more important for the position? Certainly building value is a skill that we screen for. Building relationships early in the sales process and building that trust. Qualifying, do they have a qualifying system? Do they use a sales system? So there's a whole lot of things that we identify in that assessment up front. Now, a lot of people say, oh yeah, assessments are assessments. Well, here's the research. This is not something that we just came up with and we modified. This is something that's been built over the last 30 years. It's validated, it's EEOC, it's got all of the adverse impact. We passed every legal study that has been given to us and everyone that we can find to go get certified for. But when we compare that to your position, we make a recommendation. The candidates are either recommended, not recommended, or worthy of consideration. And so we know that candidates that are not recommended are certainly not right for the job. And we would suggest that you move to the next step of the interview process, which would be a phone screen, and only do that with candidates that are recommended or worthy. And here's the why. Last study that was done in December, and we have to have third parties come in and review all of this and do all the studies and validations to meet the legal requirements. The study said that 91% of the people that were recommended and hired are with the company 12 months later and exceeding expectations. I know that's a hard number to wrap your head around, 91% success. On the adverse side of that, 75% of the candidates that were not recommended but hired anyway don't make it past 6 months. So it's not just us saying, here, go use this assessment. It's third-party data. It's science. It's married to your particular position. It's not personality. It's not behavioral. It is absolutely worth every penny. It'll save you so many hiring mistakes, and it'll give you so much more intelligence about your particular candidates. So let's say now we've got someone assessed. We're certainly going to do some more automation to work with those tools that you have, or we'll share with you some tools that we have for that automation of candidates. And One of the things that's important today is the um, candidate experience, right? So some clients say, well, how do you get people to take a test when you can't even get people to answer the resume or answer the ad? Well, there's an art to it. There's a science to it. We have probably 50 clients right now we're helping. We just helped one of them create a new welcome message. And this is an awesome way to give that candidate the experience that you want them to have to be part of your company. And we give them that experience as we ask them to complete the candidate assessment report. And so they're eager to go through this step as opposed to saying, I'm not doing that, I'm not even working there. And I know that that's a concern, but the studies that we just recently did showed that there's a 1% difference today of the candidates that are not taking the test that are applying for the position compared to 3 and 5 years ago. There was a 3% set of candidates that didn't take the assessment when they were asked. Today it's 4%. So it's not significant. And those that won't take it really disqualify themselves right up front. But we can help you automate that entire process. The phone qualification, I think this was one of the things that somebody brought up on the list early on. The phone screen is not the typical phone screen. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about your resume and tell me a little bit about yourself. What did you do? Okay, and so and I don't mean to mock anyone who might be doing those kinds of things, but we want to do a very different phone qualification. And I'll just give you a quick preview. I'll pick on Marcy since she's on our team, and I don't want to pick on any of you guys. So let's pretend I'm doing the phone screen with Marcy. We've set this phone screen up for, let's call it 1:15. Hey, Marcy, Rocky the Grown with XYZ Company. I had us down for a phone screen today at 1 p.m. Are you ready? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Marcy.
Sure. I'm ready.
Thank you. Marcy, do you have the ad with you?
I do not.
That's okay. I'd like to read it off to you and then ask you a few questions about it. Before I do that, I want to let you know that you're one of 40 people that we're calling today, and we're only going to bring in 4 for the interview. I want to wish you luck and hope you make it, but if you don't hear back from us by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, you didn't make the first cut, and we certainly appreciate the interest in our company and the opportunity. Let me start with the ad. The ad said that you must have experience calling on presidents and CEOs of mid-sized markets. It said you must be a strong hunter and a prospector. You must be able to walk in the executive hall and conference room and be able to walk the manufacturing floor. It said you have to infect the business opportunities that you work on and get to know everybody in there and protect those accounts that you generate. It also said that you need to have a strong background in IT. Can you tell me what qualifies you for this position? So, Marcy, you don't have to answer at this point, but I just want to give it a brief example of a very different phone qualification. It's very specific to the ad. It's very specific to their background. It's very specific to letting them know they got to fight for this position. And the real salespeople that you want to hire are the people that will come back and say, well, I had this experience, I did this, I did that, I did this. And what am I listening for? I'm listening for what would my prospects and my clients think of this salesperson? Would they be interested in talking with her? Or would they be, oh, she's a stammering idiot. No way I can put them in front of my clients. Close your eyes. Would you be thinking of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man or the John Wayne Swagger or the Oprah Winfrey Poise? So we want to think about that phone screen as being the first test, right? And so there's a quick example. Of course, the first interview. One of the things that our clients always start with is they walk out into the conference room or into the waiting room and they greet the salesperson. They stick their hand out, they smile, they say, hi, thank you for coming in, follow me, or in some way, shape, and form, they help the salesperson create rapport. So we don't want to do that. So if you're in the middle of interviewing salespeople, the next interview you have, walk out there and treat them just like your prospects treat them. Now, that's not mean, that's not rude, That's not bad, but just don't help them with the rapport. Don't stick your hand out first to shake their hand. If they're going to stick their hand out, yes, I'll shake their hand. If they smile at me, I smile at them, but I don't start it. I wait for them to start it. And let's see how they handle adversity. Let's see how they handle a tough prospect that they're going to go see that's buying from your competition today. Let's see what they do to create that rapport. Bring them in, sit them down, and here's what I say. You know, Marcy, I was hoping to have about 45 minutes today. I've got to cut it short. I've only got 20 minutes. I really don't want you to take this personally, but I'm going to have to ask you some really strong questions. They may be fast and furious, and I might need to interrupt you from time to time. So I apologize up front. Today is really to determine whether or not you're going to be invited back for a second interview. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. I see on your resume that you won President's Award at this particular job. I'd like to ask you a few questions about that. When did you get the award? How did you get the award? Who was the person that you sold that put you over the top to get that award? How long did that sales process take? What kind of obstacles did you have to overcome in that? Tell me about your prospecting. How often are you making outbound calls? What type of calls do you make? What do they sound like? Let me be your prospect and you tell me what they sound like. And let's role play. So I'm going to force all of these things on the salesperson on the spot, because if they're good and they've been doing it, they should be able to continue to do it. And so the whole first interview is an audition for the salesperson to show me they have the capability, they have the ability to sell to my clients in my world under my leadership. Now remember, they've already passed the assessment. They passed the phone screen. They took the time to complete the questionnaire. They took the time to send us their resume. So there's a lot of things that they've already done at this point, and I'm really here just deciding. I'm not deciding if I'm hiring them or not. I'm deciding, are they coming back for a second interview? That's all I'm thinking about. Of course, you need some notes, you need some charts, you need some graphs to be able to compare interviews with each candidate. What are you thinking about when you're in that interview? How do you control yourself and your own emotions is really important. And how you conduct yourself is really important. So we're not going to be rude. We're not going to be mean, but we are going to be kind of strict, kind of stern, kind of acting like a prospect that is not sure if they want to buy from your salespeople or not. That's the way we turn it into an interview. So when we look at the final interview, that's easy. That's all the things that people want to do anyway. That's all the things that you want to do to sell the job, to sell the opportunity, to invite that individual to come to work with you, to give them the conversation about comp plan and what your expectations are and what you're going to ask them to do, which kind of brings us to the next thing, which is the 90-day ramp-up plan. You need to review that with those candidates and make sure they're okay with that. You need to review the comp plan, the offer. When do they make money? How do they make money? What resources do they get? What's our position in the marketplace? How do we compete? What's our value statement? How do we, so it's really important on that second interview and that final interview to tell them everything you need to know. And then of course, what we don't want to do is have them go back and talk to their client or their current employer and get an offer, a counter offer. I hate that when that happens. That is such a waste of time and effort and energy. So I'll ask them, assuming that we make you an offer today and you accept, let's suppose you go back and give notice. If your current employer provides you with a counter offer, how will you handle that? And if they can't tell me right then on the spot, I'm leaving. I don't care what they offer me, I'm leaving. If they hesitate, I will not make them an offer. So the challenge is, how can someone be ready to leave a company and then get a counter offer and still want to work for that company? That doesn't make sense to me. So I have to do my job in making sure that candidate is ready to leave before I make an offer. And if they're not sure, then I'm not making an offer for that day. I may not take them completely off the table as no hire no matter what, but I'm not going to make an offer that day. I'm going to give them an assignment. I'm going to give them something to do that's going to cost them a lot of time and effort to prove to me that they really want this position. and I'm going to do my best to displace their current employer with lack of opportunity, with lack of pay, with lack of ability to expand in the market, or whatever your particular value that your company offers. So I want to make sure that we don't go through this process and then wind up, oh my gosh, they're staying where they're at, especially after they've learned about us, if they've been our competition or they've been in our industry in some way. So I got to be careful about what secrets and what information I share with candidates in that final interview as well. And then, of course, the 90-day plan. We need to know specifically week 6, week 7, week 9, week 4, week 2, what is that individual supposed to accomplish? And then what do they need as resources to accomplish those things? And that's got to be written down, and it's got to be a plan, and it's got to be held accountable to, and there's got to be weekly meetings, and there's got to be coaching and training and all kinds of things that most companies just leave out. Just like the example I gave you with my sister. Too many times employers are disappointed and it's their own fault. So we want to help clients make sure that they have a very strong, very specific 90-day plan, because if your new hire won't do it in the first 90 days, they're certainly not going to do it in the next 90 days. And then, of course, that success conditioning. Nobody's perfect. They need to learn a few more sales techniques. They need some more sales coaching than they're typically getting. They need to know how to deal with certain situations that they have not yet run into. And that success conditioning goes on forever. It's not something that stops. So as a sales hiring process, to hire sales candidates, you need to do it differently. We can attract better people. We can attract more of the right people. We can screen those people. We can streamline the sales hiring process. So I know we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. I'm going to stop here because I don't want to keep talking to the very end, and I want to open it up for questions. If any of you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat line, or click on your space bar, or just unmute yourself and interrupt me somehow. But I'm going to pause here for a moment and see if we can take some questions and answer whatever you might have not got an answer to today. Anybody? Okay, I see one coming in. How long does it typically take to hire a salesperson? Great question. The question I like to ask in addition to that is not how long does it take, but how long should it be before you want someone to be productive on your team? Because it's not just about hiring, it's about getting them productive and on your team and successful. So let's timeline it out. Let's say you said, we're going to start today. We're moving forward with hiring a salesperson. By the time you get your ads written in place, that's probably going to be next week. By the time people start applying to that, that's going to be another week. By the time you do the phone screens, that'll be another week. By the time you do the first interviews, that'll be another week. By the time you do the second interviews, that'll be another week. Then if you make an offer and they accept, they're typically going to give a couple weeks notice. Plus, salespeople like to give another week because they want to take a vacation because they're not getting a vacation from the next year, and they know that. So if you timeline all that out, how many weeks was that? 10 to 12 typically. Then let's take your sales cycle. So if your sales cycle is 60 days, let's add 30 days to that for the learning curve, for them to come in and learn enough about your product and your services and your marketplace to be able to have an intelligent conversation with a prospect. So that would be 90 days, the 30 days onboarding to get intelligent conversations, and then another 60 days for the sales cycle. So it would be 90 days. So if we take that 12 weeks plus the 90 days, we got another 12 weeks. So if you started today, realistically, you could count on somebody having productivity in your sales team by second quarter of next year. Most people don't think about it that way. They want a salesperson. They want instant results. It doesn't happen instantly. So plan, execute, and follow the right process, and you'll have great success. Okay, I think we're about out of time. I want to say thank you again. I appreciate your time, appreciate your interest. For those of you that may have to drop off, we'll send you the recording. I guess you're not here though, so that doesn't matter. But at any rate, we appreciate your time and effort. Wish you lots of great luck. If you have interest in our help, we'd love to help you. Love to have some conversations with you. If we can't help you, maybe we can provide some different resources for you and get you off to the right track on hiring some spectacular, great salespeople and make sales hiring easier for you. Have a great day and good selling, everyone.